welcome to episode 297 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 26th of August 2024. I'm Joe, and with me are Fadim.
How's it going?
Graham.
Good evening.
And Will.
Hello.
As we're recording this, the fellow that runs Telegram is under arrest in France. Who knows what's going to be the situation once we publish this. But anyway, that got me thinking, should we really be using Telegram at this point? Not just because he's been arrested, but we had some riots not long ago in the UK, organised by far-right thugs who organised themselves on Telegram and Twitter to some extent. And for a while I've been thinking, should we really be using Telegram with the crypto bollocks and all the rest of it? And that kind of led to a wider conversation about, is it possible to avoid every company that does bad things? Because you basically can't, can you? Your life just becomes impossible. You just become like Fadim if you do that.
I use Telegram. The trade-off here is between, well, many things really. It's not just as simple as, well, I don't like their politics, therefore I won't use it. There are a load of factors in here. Ease of use is a really significant one. And like popular appeal, I suppose.
Network effect.
Yeah, network effect. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But there's also other things like, banking, right? A lot of banking, I don't know numbers, but I'm, well, frankly guessing, have business practices which mean that they lend money to people who have less than perfect credit scores. Now, should they be doing that? That's a really complicated question. I don't know. They lend money to businesses who are responsible for destroying the rainforest. They certainly shouldn't be doing that. But if that means that I can pay my bills because I bank with a particular company, am I complicit in that? I don't know. And I think if you spend too long thinking about it, everyone's bad in some way, shape or form. And it's just where you draw the line.
Cloudflare is a prime example of this. It's pretty hard to avoid Cloudflare completely. And they have done some pretty bad shit over the years, turning a blind eye to just hateful shit that they've facilitated, for example. But if you completely avoided Cloudflare, then you wouldn't use half the fucking websites on the internet for a start off. Even if you're avoiding it in your own infrastructure, you're going to have to interact with Cloudflare with other people's.
That kind of says it all, though, doesn't it? If you are prepared to use it, then that's different than using it because somebody else uses it. You can't dictate to other people how they do things. Whereas, not using a particular service by a company you don't like, I think is entirely doable. But trying to do it the other way around is almost impossible.
But how far do you go down the stack of dependencies before you pull the plug? Like we talked about Pork Bun as being in my opinion, decent registrar, but they rely on Cloudflare to do their DNS. So should I not be using them? I am not choosing to use Cloudflare in this instance. It's just part of the deal. Do I care enough that I should move elsewhere? I just don't know, because it involves me making effort, and it doesn't really. I'm not really backing that company. It's a really, really difficult decision to make.
But you're deciding to use Pork Bun, who is deciding to use Cloudflare, and therefore you are deciding to use Cloudflare, aren't you?
I think that's a bit harsh. I think you can still like the company that might use, I'm hardly going to go, I'm only going to deal with companies who don't use Windows. It's that's going to be a pretty short list. But I don't have to use Windows, and I can choose not to use them. And I think equally Will can choose to use a company he likes, and they happen to use Cloudflare, but they may not later on. They might do their own thing. Like the bit you interact with, I think, is the important bit to a certain extent, because let's face it, it's probably Nestle or Unilever that owns everything anyway, so you're fucked.
What you need to do is write a browser extension, one probably exists, that blocks any page that ends with .aspx, so you're definitely not interacting with a Microsoft server.
Actually, do you know what? I think that is a genius idea, and I want that to exist.
Does anybody still use that then?
Oh, disturbingly so. I've seen that.
Boy.
I've seen it as well.
I think this is probably a very deep philosophical question wrapped up in Linux geekery.
The best kind of question.
Yeah. I mean, we've covered it a lot, but I think we just have to make our own personal choices, and that's all you can do. I'm sure we all have our own reasons for doing things, and it's the reason why we use Linux, perhaps. But to set a limit or to try and evangelize a limit is never going to work. How far do we go? You know, we're 4 white guys in Western Europe. You know, where do you want to set the limits?
Well, there's that thing about be the change you wish to see and everything, isn't there? Like, that's what Phelim's doing by not using Google and telling everyone about it any fucking chance he gets.
Damn right I am.
And I'm sure we all do, but judging other people for the kind of decisions that they make without understanding their circumstances is wrong. So I would encourage people to make decisions based on their moral code. I think that's a great thing, and I'm sure we all do. But like sharing it and then making other people feel bad perhaps when they don't have the same opportunities or have had to take certain decisions for things that we will never understand and they may never even want to say sets a dangerous precedent.
What about what social media services you use then? Like if you're continuing to use Twitter/X at this point, I refuse to call it X, it's fucking Twitter. Anyway, if you're still using Twitter at this point, you are supporting Musk, who is a word I can't say, and who unbanned loads of other word I can't say people who organize riots and shit.
I get what you mean, but I also think that a lot of people would not even link those things together. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if some people didn't even know who the fuck Musk was, to be quite honest.
Oh, yeah.
And I get where you what you mean by it, but equally, people can be oblivious. They can be in their own shell or, you know, circle group, and fair fucks them that they've managed to avoid that, and that's great. But what can you do? Like, it's like that whole thing of, hey, drug dealers use roads. I'm not going to use a fucking road. You won't catch me doing that. It's like, it's a very hard thing to stop. I mean, I will slag people for making the choices in computing that they might do, but I'm only doing it out of fun. And I think, as Graham says, you can't make a judgment call on how people see things or what they've been influenced by or whatever. It's a very difficult thing to do.
Look, if you are using Twitter for football banter or something like that, or celebrity gossip, and you have no clue about the politics of Musk and all the rest of it, then fine. I'm not going to judge you.
But I mean, look at the amount of government organisations that do alerts issued through Twitter. Electricity, water supply, things like that. I don't know of any of them on Mastodon for any of the ones that I would use in Ireland. And they have Twitter stuff and they do it all the time.
And there are established communities who just are unable to move to Mastodon. I mean, they should, but we can't call them out for not doing that. Like independent games development, there's so much of that gets done and talked about on Twitter. They should move, but we can't. I don't feel like we could judge them for not doing so.
Equally, I get your point that like Musk is a frankly awful human being and I wish him all the worst in life.
Yeah. And we've all stopped using it, haven't we?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, I have the odd time we'll look in on it, but compared to what I used to do, almost nothing. But I can see people being very stuck by it and they have no way to get out because their local government agency uses Twitter. And like, what do they do for emergency alerts for volcanoes or God knows what in their area? Like, it has become almost a de facto messaging system for things like that. And it's shit that billionaires come around and buy these fucking things and they should be all run by a fucking foundation because that's what they are. They are foundational systems.
Yeah, that works out really well when key internet stuff is run by a foundation.
Okay, fine. Competent foundations then. Jesus, did I have to include that?
They do have some nice side projects in web browsers, though.
But what is the alternative to Twitter, realistically? Like, we would all say Mastodon and the Fediverse, right? But journalists are now starting to question, or at least in the UK, should I be on Twitter? And of course, they're still on there. But there's some MPs, politicians, that are actually moving away. But they're not moving to the Fediverse, are they? They're moving to fucking Threads. Because, yeah, Zuckerberg, he's a real stand-up guy, isn't he, compared to Musk?
What is Threads again?
That's the Meta one. It's like Instagram version of Twitter. Basically.
What's the other one that your man with the beard who used to be on fucking Twitter?
Oh, Dorsey, Blue Sky.
Oh, yeah, that's that one. Okay. Oh, to be honest, those two things to me are dead. I don't even know what the fuck they are. They don't exist.
Well, Threads, I think, is going to ultimately take over from Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, that's the way it's looking to me.
Fuck's sake. Okay, cool.
I mean, it's going to be fractured. I don't think Twitter's going to just go away. Hopefully it will, but I don't think it will.
The only thing about Threads is, doesn't it use PubSub?
There are some federated elements to it. Like, you can broadcast to the Fediverse, and I think you can reply now to people on threads, but I just don't really care, to be honest.
But I mean, realistically, that's what you want. I mean, this is, how the fuck did we get to here from there? I mean, this is meant to be talking about not touching companies that you don't want to touch, but we've all got to, we should be using like some sort of independent PubSub client of some sort. That doesn't stop me buying the wrong washing powder, though, does it?
Well, I think with washing powder, you've got very few choices because there are so few companies. And unless you're trying to find some independent company in your area who does it.
Boutique.
Yeah. Whatever you buy is going to be made by one of 3 or 4 companies that own most of the food you eat and most of the drinks you drink and clothes you buy and all the rest of it because of the nature of conglomeration. So really, you're just pissing in the wind, aren't you? Trying to be ethical.
I think every little helps. We all do what we can, honestly, over hundreds of years.
Okay, Tesco, man.
You just got to do what you can and just try your best. But it's just, I do think it's pissing in the wind, really. I think I'm just trying to justify using the likes of Cloudflare to myself because it's easy. I don't really have any current plans to.
And education is key to it as well. And affecting legislation, if that's possible, or supporting the organisations or the foundations that can influence legislation, like the EFF.
Yeah. But I think it always comes back to don't judge people, not out loud at least. Okay, this episode is sponsored by 1Password. Imagine your company's security like the quad of a college campus. There are nice brick paths between the buildings. Those are company-owned devices, IT-approved apps, and managed employee identities. And then there are the paths people actually use, the shortcuts worn through the grass that are the actual straightest line from point A to B. Those are unmanaged devices, shallow IT apps, and non-employee identities like contractors. Most security tools only work on those happy brick paths, but a lot of security problems take place on the shortcuts. 1Password Extended Access Management is the first security solution that brings all these unmanaged devices, apps, and identities under your control. It ensures that every user credential is strong and protected, every device is known and healthy, and every app is visible. 1Password Extended Access Management solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. It's security for the way we work today, and it's now generally available to companies with Okta and Microsoft Entra, and in beta for Google Workspace customers. So support the show and check it out at onepassword.com/late-night-linux. That's onepassword.com/late-night-linux. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to latenightlinux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed of either just this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. Let's do Voice of the Masses. We haven't done this for a while. So we put this question to our followers on Mastodon. Should we try to convert Windows subsystem for Linux users into proper native desktop Linux users? If so, how? The answer was no. So we should probably just move on. Everybody said no. So Graham, you kind of came up with this question. So I don't know, try and devil's advocate it.
Okay, devil's advocate it. I think the right answer is no, but it's an opportunity perhaps to create images that people are using on WSL that guide people towards becoming full-time proper native Linux users. Not like in a convincing way, but in a way that we've all become because it's generally the better option for a lot of things. So I think it's an opportunity. It'd be great if there was a popular image that kind of pushed people or nudged people or evangelized a little bit about what Linux could be like if you were running it natively.
I think that's a genuinely great idea. And to do it with a soft sell as well. Because, I mean, yes, as everybody said, no is the correct answer because those people don't want to. But you could, like some of the new KDE web pages have been done. I'm sure GNOME has done the same too, where they're trying to make web pages for people that are looking to do a task, KDE for developers, KDE for whatever, and try and show them that way, but not in a pushy way at all.
Well, Hearn Sushi said, no, I'm a firm believer in helping people who are actively looking for help. Trying to convert someone that is using a tool, WSL in this case, feels like bothering a person who just ordered a vegan meal in a restaurant and unprovoked telling them about all the benefits of veganism. I don't know why they made that choice, but it definitely doesn't mean they necessarily need my help or input on that decision. And Rambling Steve said, no, WSL is a tool used in the context of its environment. If you didn't have to use WSL, you would already be running a Linux box. So there is some wider infrastructure issue that the user is toiling under. And that is a message that a lot of people gave to us here, that the chances are, if people are using WSL, it's because they have to be using Windows for some reason, whether that is their employer mandating it or they need a certain bit of software that only runs on Windows. And so a lot of people seem to think that it's not a real possibility to convert people.
Do we not think that's the wrong way around? Do we not think they're using WSLs because Windows can't do the thing they're trying to do and they're stuck in Windows land?
I think the vast majority of people are using WSL because the tool that they want to use probably runs on Windows, but all of the documentation is for Mac, let's be honest. And so they are using the Linux equivalent on WSL.
I think there's also an argument that if a company finds itself using lots of things through WSL, they could save money, they could be more secure. I know that that's a big ask, but maybe they'll find that they can broaden their Windows-only shop to include a few Linux machines, having tried it like this. I mean, I know a lot of people who use it, and I know a lot of people who use it for Bash and for SSH, and for things that could, I guess, normalizes the use of such tools where I don't know anything about Windows anymore, but if you don't know how they work, or if it just looks so arcane from a distance, but you start using them and incorporating them in part of your tooling, then maybe the next step is to look at a native solution.
Well, Axe made a good point. Only if they're interested to learn more. I don't like to convert people. I prefer to show off my system instead and answer their questions. Uninterested parties, I just leave alone. Most people I know using WSL already know what it is, and to them it's just a tool, so I won't bother trying to sell them a new hammer while their old one still works. However, saying I contributed to Linux thing is a good way to get friends and family interested, at least in my experience. 2 of my friends now use Linux Desktop because I mentioned I worked on it. Then my parents also wanted to try it and still use it. I'd never heard of that before as a reason why someone would try Linux, because someone they know contributed to it. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
And of course, it's KDE stuff.
Of course it is. That's because it is cool.
It's
the cool desktop environment. Yeah. Hey.
Well, Mike said, for work, I'm pretty much stuck with Windows, but I use WSL heavily. If you're using WSL, you're not in the normie category of user. We just need to point out Linux has gotten so easy to use since I started with it back in the 90s. There's very little a WSL user can't do with a standard desktop Linux install. Cloud apps like Microsoft 365 and native apps mean virtually all bases are covered, except annoying ads built in and crazy LLMs telling us lies masquerading as facts. Whether we should try to convert them is a little bit more nuanced. People like their tools, and they like what's comfortable to them. I think it's a bad idea to put pressure on people to switch. You push, and they're going to push back. The best way to get someone to switch is just give them a taste of FOMO. If they see your computer running smoothly, easily, and without ads or crazy AI tools mucking up your workflow, that could be all it takes to get them to consider switching.
Compulsory cube usage.
Yeah, I think that has got to be the approach, hasn't it? You've got to just show them the cool stuff that you can do that is different from what you can do on Windows. I mean, they might then turn around and show you the cool stuff they can do, like running applications that you can't.
Shite applications.
Well, you know, Adobe and all the rest of it that we've been over a million times. But I do think that the message that we got back from people is right. I think that WSL just serves a different purpose to desktop Linux.
Trying to make Windows still relevant in a world where it isn't.
Oh, yeah, this operating system that billions of people use isn't relevant for them. Yeah.
Not for running systems, it isn't.
Well, it depends if you've got CrowdStrike or not, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's a blast from the past now.
I think that's good, though. I think the responses have been very mature and enlightened, and maybe not what we'd have got, 10 or 15 or 33 years ago.
Just think of the lack of wear on that dollar symbol over the 4 on your keyboard.
I think you're right, though, Graham. I think that we as a community have matured. Maybe it's just a Mastodon thing, because to be on Mastodon, you have to be a bit more, a bit cleverer than being on Twitter and that sort of thing. But it does reflect a more mature attitude, I think. We don't feel like we have to force it on people and make them feel bad for using Windows. I mean, I suppose you do, Phelim, but
obviously
you're not as mature as the rest of us, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm still young at heart. I'm not decrepit and fettered like you lot.
And I still maintain that it's better for someone to use WSL on Windows than not use Linux at all.
And I think that's pointless, but anyway.
It's not pointless. It's the gateway drug.
Is it though?
Yes, it is.
Fair. I mean, like, I want to believe that's true, but I just don't think it is.
I want to believe it's true as well. People only use WSL when they can't use proper Linux, and they'll get used to how cool the Linux aspects of Windows are, and then when they are free to do so, they'll run Linux.
I'm pretty sure they're just building software. That's it.
I want to believe it's a good thing.
Oh, I think it is. I think however they're using it, that is a good thing. Just because it's sitting on something else, it doesn't matter. But as we've talked about this before, the proprietary firmwares in the monitors that we're using, or even secure boot, which we've mentioned recently, we're all making compromises, and who are us to call other people out for the ones they're making?
Exactly. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when it'll probably be news and stuff, but we'll have to see. Until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.